Can you guys hear that? That is the sound of the rumour mill, and it has been turning quite vehemently in the past few weeks, especially where Google is concerned. So there have been a good number of rumours flying across the internet in the past couple of hours before recording this that Google has purchased or is going to purchase Twitch TV. And I'd like to talk about that today because it's some pretty interesting news, especially when you combine it with another rumour, which I'll talk about a little later on. So the rumour is, and it's a pretty substantial rumour, I mean quite a lot of high-profile people are talking about it and tweeting about it, that I feel that it's worth making a video even at this early stage, that Google will be buying Twitch TV for $1 billion. And I think when these kind of things happen, especially where Google's involved, there's usually an amalgamation of good things that are going to come out of this and an amalgamation of bad things that are going to come out of this. Google's a big company, biggest company on the internet. It's google.com is the most commonly visited website on the internet. YouTube.com, which if you don't already know is a company owned by Google, is the third most commonly visited website on the internet. Google's a big company. And Google is, to me at least, the Swiss Army knife of internet tools for people that collaborate on projects. Google Drive is fantastic when you can share and collaborate on written documents, spreadsheets. The Google Groups are great for mailing lists and that kind of thing. Gmail, of course, is a fantastic service. And, let's not mention that their search engine isn't too shabby either. YouTube, especially with some of the recent additions with the ability to have channels with multiple contributors on, is a fantastic video sharing website. The best on the internet, even with all its faults. Google's a damn good company, but it's one hell of a monolith. And one of the biggest things that concerns me about Google is that we rely on its benevolence in a lot of cases. A lot of you might argue that Google is not particularly benevolent and will have some particularly good points on that as well. But I think Google, considering the fact that it is the biggest company on the internet and that it is such a powerful company, do by and large act a lot more ethically than they could. And it does concern me that there isn't much competition keeping up with Google. There's a little, but not much. Facebook is the second most commonly visited website on the internet. But unfortunately, I consider Facebook to be a less ethical company than Google. It also only on occasion really competes with Google. Google Plus would like to compete with Facebook, but they seem to be sufficiently different enough companies that they seem to be coexisting in reasonable harmony right now. Yahoo is probably the closest competitor to Google. A lot of you might not consider Yahoo to be a particularly big company, but Yahoo.com is the fourth most commonly visited website on the internet. A lot of people use Yahoo. Yahoo's been around a lot longer than Google. A lot of older people tend to prefer Yahoo. A lot of people that were on the internet a long time ago, not a long time ago, like pre-Google, still have a lot of their Google accounts working. Yahoo also supply the mail service for BT Internet users. BT Internet, of course, is is the biggest telecoms company in the UK here, and I'm sure there are other companies that do similar things. And Yahoo Mail is pretty good, but it is a bit advert heavy, and it also fails to keep Google in check. It likes to. Flickr does kind of compete with Picasa, and the search engines are, commonly used. The mail services, there's something in Yahoo, but Google's not scared of Yahoo. Yahoo's got a lot of potential. It wants to move into the video sharing game. It wants to compete with YouTube, but its attempt to buy out Dailymotion.com failed. French government intervened. Dailymotion is actually a company video sharing company that, by and large, is running quite fine. I mean, it's one of the most commonly visited video sharing websites on the internet. It's the second most commonly used video sharing website next to YouTube worldwide, although I do believe Vimeo is next to in English-speaking countries. But anyway, I digress. Twitch TV kind of sometimes competed with YouTube in terms of its live streaming capability. But YouTube, and more specifically Google, have been putting a lot of stock into Google Plus and Google Hangouts. Google Hangouts is what runs a lot of the live stream aspects to YouTube. And YouTube does have a pretty strong live streaming service. In fact, I would argue that it's better than Twitch's. The only difference really, or the only practical difference from a creator standpoint, is that when you're streaming to Twitch, when you go online, it sends an email out to all your subscribers saying that you're online. With YouTube, you just appear in their subscription inbox, if you plan out the stream in advance, I think you can get, there's like a calendar feature, but it's not amazing and particularly widely used. And what makes me feel particularly intrigued about this is what Google are going to do with Twitch, because Google are well known for mangling the companies that they purchase. The juxtaposition to this would be Facebook doing the opposite. When they buy something like Instagram, they tend to leave that company well alone. In fact, Facebook, by and large, seem to be buying up other companies to diversify their portfolio and to give them like an extra leg to stand on, an extra string to their bow, those kind of cliches. Whereas Google tend to want to absorb other brands into their company to try and expand their features and to expand the kind of things that they can do. Case in point, Picasa, Blogger, YouTube, and Facebook use, they have Instagram, WhatsApp. Is that a Facebook purchase company? So, and Oculus Rift, of course, and Oculus Rift, by and large, I reckon will be somewhat unchanged in the short term as a result of Facebook buying it out. Because Facebook have a history of leaving companies alone, Google do not. So, what are Google going to do with Twitch? I mean, YouTube already has a fine streaming service. It's known for streaming things that aren't games, and Twitch, of course, tends to be the go-to place for streaming games. Although on my gaming channel, I stream on YouTube, and it works fine, and it works, in my personal opinion, better than Twitch. More people have Google accounts, more people comment, more people engage with streams on YouTube, even when those streams are games. YouTube, if it wanted to go up in a straight-up competition against Twitch, could win easily. It has better servers, it has a better service, more people are signed up to it. But it buys out Twitch. Interesting. And Google don't usually buy out companies to squash competition either. That's, again, not in their history. It might be a new tactic, they might be trying something new, but I don't. I suspect that if they're going to be buying out Twitch, they're going to be absorbing it. And I would be very interesting to see, in a year's time, what that particular scene would look like. Because there is, in addition to another rumour that's been going around about Google, which might have something which might come into play here. I've heard a number of tech magazines and online magazines, blogs, etc., refer to Google Plus as being Walking Dead. I'll link to a relevant article down in the description which kind of expands on what I mean by Walking Dead. The idea that Google Plus has never really caught on. No matter how much YouTube and Google want to just push it at us, Google Plus is not going to fly. People don't want to use it. A lot of people don't really know what it's all about. I mean, is it trying to replace Facebook? Is it just trying to amalgamate every single other Google service into one social media feed? What is Google Plus? Some people have, from within Google, have actually been referring to Google Plus not as a social media platform or a social media service, but rather as just a platform to link other Google services together. And that's kind of interesting. I got to say, I think the Google Plus is all right, but I think the fact that no one actually uses it is probably its biggest problem. And I think that it does, like, I don't like the way that it handles my information. I think that its privacy settings are just too complicated. I like Twitter's privacy settings, where you can have a private account, you can have a public account, and you also have, like, you can add on a lot of apps to Twitter, and I like that because your apps can manage your information a lot better. I am subscribed up to Tweet Delete, which removes any tweet that I have that that are older than a week. Just simply because I consider it good practice not to have out-of-date information and irrelevant quotes about you flying around on the internet when you don't have to, when they're not relevant, when they're not being useful anymore. Because has a tweet that's longer than a week old ever been useful to anyone? No. So why is it there on the internet? Why isn't every tweet on Twitter deleted after it's a week old? And I don't get that, really. Well, I do. It's because advertisers can make money off of gathering information about you. But screw those guys. I am one of those guys, but screw me anyway. So anyway, yeah. So Google Plus is by and large, it's considered walking dead. No one wants to use Google Plus. I don't want to use Google Plus. No one else wants to really use Google Plus. You could even make some really decent arguments that it's not a bad service. The fact that you can't link any apps to it might even be, in one capacity, to its credit, because it means that you don't have constant updates from, was it Bitstrips and Foursquare updates and this, that, and that. People, having auto posts of fluff. But then, of course, on the other hand, then you've got Google auto posting all the fluff. So where it has a potential to cut out a lot of rubbish from your feed, it then fills that gap with its own rubbish, with maybe some Picasa or some reviews on the Google Play Store. Why the hell would I want my reviews on the Google Play Store in my social media feed? That doesn't make any sense, because when people are browsing my social media feed, they're not buying apps. And I don't kind of like the way how it manages that information. But anyway, I digress. Twitter, better, simpler, straightforward. No, but anyway, yeah. So Google Plus just isn't catching on, and the folks at Google have kind of realised this. They're actually moving a lot of their staff away from Google Plus, Google Hangouts, the chat, and all that kind of stuff, and they're reducing the amount of staff that are working on Google Plus, and they deny that there's a change in strategy, but to be honest, it doesn't even look like there's that much strategy involved. At one point, they looked like they were trying to compete with Facebook. Then they kind of shunned away, and they just looked like they wanted to have some kind of like everything you've ever done on Google just neatly put into one feed, and the circles. Oh, for God's sake! It didn't work for them. I don't know. The whole in-face design was terrible. Their Hangouts could have been really good. The chat. The system, like there is space for a good instant messaging service. It's a very that particular aspect of social media is something that people really want a good, solid version of. A good, solid instant messaging service, because it's a very fractured industry. There are people still using AOL Instant Messenger. There are still people using MSN Instant Messenger. There are people using Skype. There are people using the Facebook chat, the Twitter chat. It's a very fractured service. There is no one go-to instant messaging service. Google could have filled that space, but they didn't. Google Plus is failing, and it's failing largely down to poor implementation as well. Because people already have the Google accounts. They already have the access to the service. They're still not using it. That's a red flag, Google. You've messed up when people who already have accounts to your service just aren't using it. You've given it to them on a silver platter, and people still don't want it. Google Plus ain't catching on, and Google are working this out. They know this, and what they're doing is that they've moved some of their staff away from Google Plus, a lot of their staff. So they're kind of running on a bit of a skeleton crew. You could make the argument that it's because they are. They've done the bulk of their development work, so they need less staff on it. But they really wanted Google Plus to be their flagship product, and they're not. And they've changed a lot of the language that they're referring to Google Plus as. They're now referring to it as a platform rather than a product. So it doesn't seem to be a thing anymore, but rather the crevice where all other Google, where the crap from all other Google products just flows into a stream of useless social media waste that's occupied by your Google Plus feed. That's what Google essentially is. It's the sewer system of Google-based social media, I guess. It's where all the crap just ends up and becomes stagnant. So, going back to how this applies to Twitch. Now, Google Plus is integrated quite closely with YouTube, and particularly the live streaming section of YouTube. They might want to reduce the actual volume and capacity that Google Plus has within the entire sphere of Google products. And it might want to change tack when it comes to, or change strategy when it comes to the live streaming elements of Google and of YouTube. And Twitch TV might be a way into that. You might have YouTube for videos, and you might have Twitch for live streaming, but it might all be part of an integrated Google setup, and that could actually work quite well, because it could bring live streaming, particularly live streaming with games, more into the Google fold. In fact, bringing gaming and gaming video into the Google fold a little more can only be a good thing. There's been a lot of problems with Let's Plays and video game videos and video game content in general over the past couple of years with YouTube, and Twitch have worked out a lot of the legal aspects to gaming on the internet, basically, and I think Google might just want Twitch's legal team, if nothing else, but they might, Google knows what Let's Playing is. They know that PewDiePie is, of course, by far the most successful YouTuber who became successful primarily through gameplay videos, and there are also many, many, many other big gameplay YouTube channels which have made, so YouTube knows that it relies quite heavily on video games for a lot of its successful content. So it really doesn't seem beyond logical that they might actually turn to Twitch to try and capitalize on that particular corner of the market. Is this bad or good for the consumer? Well, it's going to be both, isn't it, really? It's going to be good in some capacity. It's going to be good in the capacity that more, like, if, assuming that Google do with Twitch what it does with every other company that it's acquired, is that it's going to upgrade their servers. Good for the consumer. It's going to merge the account system. So your Twitch account's going to merge with your Google account. That means more people are going to be on Twitch as a collective result, which means that content creators on Twitch and Twitch as a platform in and of itself will become more commonly used. And that, by and large, is good for both content creators and consumers, because when content creators get more, say, ad revenue and subscription revenue, that means they can stream more often. It means they can do more with their channel. It means they can provide better quality content. So, again, that could mean good for the consumer as well. Google advertising does, as much as we ooh and ah and criticize it, it is actually fundamentally some of the best advertising structure on the internet. Even though it does delve a little bit into it has a few privacy concerns with it. Fundamentally speaking, those privacy concerns, the amount that it infringes on our privacy is mitigated by the lack of intrusiveness of the advertising. So it's a bit of a switch out there. And by and large, when it comes to my surfing information and my search history and so forth, I trust Google more than I trust just about any other company just off the bat. So from an advertising structure, again, it'll probably benefit both the content creators and the consumers as well, because of course YouTube and Google do have a history of giving a decent share of their ad revenue to their content creators. They could give more, but they give a decent enough amount as it is. So there you go. So the bad aspects of it is that there's going to be less competition for Google live streaming. And one of the things I do fear about Google, because whenever there's a rumor being churned out, anyone that's invested as much time as myself or any of the other, YouTubers who have 1,000 or more subscribers, we've put a lot of work and effort and time and energy into our channels here. And it always makes us a bit nervous to think that there's a change in the works, because we don't want all that work and effort and energy and money as well. I mean, we have spent money advertising a lot of our content and working, the camera equipment and sound equipment. It's not free. And all that we've put into this channel, we don't want that to be undone, if it can be helped. So it does make us all a bit nervous, and it does. Yeah. And one of the things I do like, as much as I like Google products, I like the idea of there being some solid competition to keep Google in check. Google doesn't have a history of buying out the competition in the same way that other companies like Microsoft have. But I don't want to see it take up that habit, because it's a hostile one in a business climate that can be so collaborative and cooperative and consumer friendly. So anyway, yeah, Twitch TV being bought out by Google might be a way to change its strategy with Google+. It might be a way to have a streaming service that isn't linked to Google+, or isn't as heavily linked to Google+, because it might want to put Google+ on the back burner. And for that's not a bad thing either for the consumer. So anyway, guys, I've only really scratched the surface and speculated on a few rumours here. I apologise if, since me making this video and you guys watching it, that more information has come to light that's relevant or has disproved what I said or anything like that. So please feel free to discuss this down in the comment section below. It'd be quite interesting to hear your thoughts on it. Like I said, Twitch as a service will probably improve as a result of this. Unfortunately, though, it means less competition for Google, and that, by and large, isn't a good thing, because the next biggest video sharing website is Vimeo.com in English-speaking countries and Dailymotion.com everywhere else. Both of those sites do sit comfortably within the top 100 websites most commonly visited, but they are far, far further down the list than YouTube. YouTube doesn't really have any solid competition, and that does concern me. Twitch kind of, at least in some capacity, had competition over its live streaming section, over its, there were over some gameplay elements. It was obviously more gameplay friendly, video game friendly rather. But maybe Yahoo Screen might be the service that we require. I don't know. And like I say, it's not that I want to jump the YouTube ship. YouTube have been very good to me, and it's fantastic to have a platform to be able to speak to you guys on. But I would like to see competition. I'd like to see diversity in the market. I think that's particularly important. So guys, like I say, let me know what you think down in the comments section below. That's about it from me today. I've been Chris Ware, and you've been awesome. Take care now.